Thanks for that introduction, Gerald, and again, welcome everybody. It's really good to see a few familiar faces here. The topic of my talk was achievements, constraints and opportunities, which I thought was a bit of a toughie, really. I'm really preaching to the converted in many ways, and I think certainly in a few areas, particularly markets and things like that, you guys would know more than me. But so I thought, well, really what I really want to do for this first session is just set the scene a little bit, probably, if you like, crow a little bit as well. As Gerald said, we've been going as the NZDFI since 2008, and so it's a chance to reflect on what's been achieved. So that's really where I want to put my emphasis. For some of you, some of this information you'll have seen before, and I won't really apologise for that. There's nothing like retelling a good story, as far as I'm concerned anyway. So everybody here knows about the NZDFI, the Drylands Forestry Initiative. That first slide there is really just to say we have a website. There's a lot of information on there. Paul and Harriet maintain that really well, and I encourage you to, when you've got a chance, if you haven't already done so, take the time and have a look at what we've got to offer. As far as the NZDFI is concerned, basically we started well before that, but officially the NZDFI was launched in 2009, and I still remember the day it was here. I certainly remember some of the stories that Professor John Walker told, which I can't even repeat here, about wood, but very funny. But it was really a momentous sort of an occasion for us, and I really thank Gerald and some of the other people that were behind the NZDFI. And there's a guy on the left there, John Maris, and locals will know him really well. He was the chair, I think, if that was the right word, of the board of this establishment. Very, very well regarded in the wine industry. I think Wither Hills was his brand, and some of you may sort of partake of that a little bit later on tonight, perhaps at the barbecue. And we started putting out our first official trials, and you can see where I can still remember walking up the slope there, planting our first trees of some of the trials at Lawson's property. So there we started. As far as partners are concerned, well, I think Gerald's already mentioned the founding members. The Marlborough Research Centre. Again, I can't really emphasise too much just how important the Marlborough Research Centre has been to this whole operation. Gerald's provided all the administration as well as some funding. Nothing's ever an issue, and it just makes life so much easier, and it allows the researchers, the people out in the field, just to get on with the work. So thanks to Gerald and his team. Obviously we're there, Proseed, the University of Canterbury, and they're going to be talking to you quite a bit today about the program of research, and there's some really, really interesting stuff, and I hope you're going to get a lot out of that today. And of course we can't go anywhere without talking about Vineyard Timbers and Paul Millen, because really it's been his drive in keeping things together that's really got us to the point where we are today. So a lot of thanks must go to him. As far as supporters go, there's quite an extensive list there, and there are a lot more. And I really want to thank the people at the bottom, the landowners in particular, for hosting the trials. I want to acknowledge the likes of Marlborough Lines, a founding member, and Jeff Hawes here today. Our beekeeper, wherever he is, there up the back. But also what I just want to note here, that even though they're probably not here in any numbers, although I see Sean McBride from Dukins here, we are starting to get a lot more interest from the corporate forest sector. And I think that's really important as we go forward in New Zealand. There is life apart from radiata pine, so and hopefully you'll see a bit more of that today. So we had a vision in 2008, and you've always got to have something which is really out there, and we wanted to be a world leader. We wanted to dominate, a bit like Donald Trump, I suppose. We want to take over the world in breeding ground durable eucalypts. I think we're kind of on our way. And more to the point, we wanted to establish an industry in New Zealand for the future. It's one thing to be putting out these trials, but at the end of the day, trials, there's no real value unless we've got an industry coming from that. And so we set ourselves a target of 100,000 hectares of durable eucalypt forest, not eucalyptus forest, because we do have a history of eucalypts in New Zealand, but most of the major ones are non-durables. So what do we want to do? Well, obviously we need information and we need germplasm in order to provide potential growers with the best material that they can, so that they know at the end of the day that there's a profit in this. We want to reduce risk as much as possible. And we really need to know, eucalypts are very site-specific. So there's a lot of information that we need to know about these eucalypts, and so hence this program. And it's really an integrated research program. I think one of the things about this program which really appeals to me is just we've got a number of disciplines here. We've got entomology, we've got wood quality, we've got classical tree breeding, we've got propagation, we've got the whole gamut of operations. So I think that's really, for me, is one of the things that makes it quite exciting. We can see the whole picture. And you can see there the roles of the three of the founding members anyway, the Marlborough Research Centre, and really Vineyard Timbers through Paul and that, really responsible, along with Ruth McConaughey, who's here with the trial management and assessments and what have you. And my guys, we're really tasked with propagation and seed collection, and then you've got the research proper, the breeding, processing, what have you, that's being done by the university. I can't go any further without sort of saying this is nothing new here that we're doing. This has been tried before in New Zealand, or at least has been talked about, and it's about lost opportunities. And I recall from conversations, I think, with Paul, even back in the 20s, there was talks of, there were stands of durables planted for railway sleepers and what have you, but the Treasury came along in 1987 and sold the lot, basically, and that was a lost opportunity. But certainly, even our Scion and what have you investigated this reasonably thoroughly, and a number of trials went out, but there wasn't really a lot of depth to it. It was good, it was well done with scarce resources, but it didn't go anywhere. And when you start thinking about why would that be, well, there's a whole lot of reasons that I've outlined up there that come from a paper or a review by Ken Eldridge, a very, very well-regarded Australian eucalypt tree breeder. And we can see all the standards when it comes to New Zealand, sort of do it on the back of a postage stamp type operations, but basically insufficient funding and what have you. But also really an industry which is really dominated by radiata pine, and radiata is just so successful, it's very hard to move away from it. And in many ways, we're not trying to do that. What we're trying to do is supplement the good industry that we've already got. I won't go through the rest of them, but we know them. Pests and diseases, we're going to hear a little bit about that today, and obviously it's rearing its head again with myrtle rust and what have you. But I'm always taken with Ken's little line that the natural genetic resources of eucalypts are still a sack of uncut diamonds. There's so much variation, variability, so many species. The problem with eucalypts and with the program is everybody's got a favourite, and for us it was always about where do we focus, where do we put our money, our scarce resources. So why durables? Well, many of you live in this area, 26,000 hectares of vineyards. It's really important, and the big issue in the vineyard industry, certainly in the vineyards themselves, are posts and poles and breakage, and to a lesser extent, but probably more important in the future, this whole question of CCA treated materials. So some of the options and opportunities that we see here for durable wood, vineyard posts, cross arms. I know Marlborough lines are particularly interested in it from that viewpoint. LVL beams coming, possibly the likes of Dukin, NPI, that we're going to visit there tomorrow. Very interested in that area. And also, we import a lot of hardwood species, timber, and there's an opportunity there to replace that and see where we go. So, not telling anything you don't already know, but you can see here, 5%, between 5 and 10% of posts every year get broken in a typical vineyard. And this was really the spur that got Paul really interested in this whole business of a solution for a problem. And that's something which is we like to think a little bit different about this particular program, that it's very much driven by trying to provide a solution to an issue that was facing the vineyard, the viticultural industry. And the cross arms as well, importing material from Australia and increasingly finding it difficult, I think, Jeff, to find good material, to source it. And while those were key drivers early on, I mean, we're an export-oriented country, and we cannot help but just look at the rise of the Asian middle class, the love of wood, and particularly wood and colour, and the opportunities that these species also offer, I think is enormous. And you can see, many of you have seen these photos before, but you can see what you can do with some of our species. And the colour, that's Cameldulensis. Certainly high value products can be grown from these, produced from these species. So just to sort of take you back a little bit, so how we settled upon the species that we did. I mean, there's over 600. So we basically looked for species, obviously with durability. We were looking at coppicing from the viewpoint of how we were going to propagate these species. We were looking for an element of drought and frost sort of tolerance, and I say tolerance, not resistance. I've got in red there pest tolerance. That's certainly an issue that's still with us today. And our view at the time was we would have a suite of species to so we could swap between one another depending on how things turned out. We'd like to think going forward that possibly there will be a little bit more science behind opportunities to sort of at least live with pests. I don't think we're ever going to get away from them. So 2003 to 2007, Paul embarked upon a lot of testing of species in Marlborough. We supplied the seed, sourced it from Australia, and you can see tested a lot of species. And 25 to 5, down to 5 at the end of the day, we decided these were species that we wanted to go on with. And you can see them on the left there. Basistowana was really our flagship at the time, probably the most ground durable, class 1, which is 50 years plus in the ground, and that's an Australian convention. But then also Globoid deer, Quadrangulata. I mean, a number of these species, some of you will have these species in trials on your land, and all going reasonably well. But also, one of the things about this program, we're always conscious of the fact that people do have favourites. And so there were a number of trials, demonstration trials put out, and so we're also looking to possibly put out other species that local farm foresters were interested in. And also we had to have radiata pine in our trials. Our job at Proseed really was to begin this process of actually collecting the genes, if you like, through a seed collection in Australia. So for the major species, most of them were not well represented in New Zealand, and in actual fact, increasingly less so in Australia as well. A lot of them are either they're remnant forests in the case of Basistowana, or they're locked up in national park and you can't actually, it's increasingly difficult to get to them. So in 2003, we just began a series of seed collections along the Australian seaboard, basically, and that, if you look at that map there, we go from northern New South Wales right into Victoria. So that's collections that started in actually 2008, and we've done 4 major collections there, so that we've got over 200 families. So we've got the best range of genes outside of Australia for Eucalyptus persistuana. I'd say globoi deer, and well, probably all of the major species that we're dealing with. So, and we're really pleased to have them in New Zealand, because I'm convinced it's going to be increasingly difficult to get them in here. Now, they've gone out onto over 30 sites over the last 10 years. There's more than 150,000 seedlings gone out. I think that's a massive number, isn't it? And 70 hectares of trials. And I'd say, you can see where we started out, and the real emphasis around the Marlborough area with the vineyards, and then into southern the Wairarapa region, and then increasingly up the east coast. So certainly focusing on the drylands, but we're not, while we say we are the New Zealand Drylands Initiative, we're sure these species can do pretty well in some of the other sites, the wetter sites, and certainly in the central North Island, that seems to be the case. At the same time, these breeding trials have gone out, and Luis Appialazza will be talking to you about that a little bit later on. Already we've made our first round of selections, so I don't know if you can see too much there, but there's a young persistuana seed orchard at Amberley. We now have quadrangulata as well.
They're grafted, are they?
They're grafted. It's a grafted seed orchard. Selections made basically growth and form at the moment, because we don't have any information on durability. So really, it's just it's the first round, and we would expect over time to have much better material going in. But we've made a start anyway. And part of that also is really, in terms of Proseed, what we've had to do is we've really had to look at the whole propagation systems. And in 2012, we've built a propagation unit which allows us to carry out research into clonal production. You can see there on the left-hand side in the bottom corner, we've been experimenting with hydroponics. A number of these technologies that are used just routinely in South America, in the programs over there, and also we're grafting. So all of the new orchards and everything are all grafted, and that's all done indoors in this propagation unit. So that's been a real godsend for us, and at the moment we have, and I'm probably stealing Paul's thunder, our man that looks after it, over 600 clones in that propagation facility as I speak, hopefully rooting. So to sort of summarise where we're at with the progress to date, as I say, more than 150,000 trees in trials, demonstration trials spread across New Zealand. We've got seed stands, some seed coming from there. We've made our first selections, particularly for persistuana, and now we have a quadrangulata orchard in as well. And we've got to build a propagation facility and looking at the other options that will be available to us when this new material, our researchers finally point to these genotypes and say, these are the ones that you guys should be using commercially. So we hope to be able to bulk those up in some way. Just a quick slide about health risks. You can't talk about eucalypts without health risks. And we've got Tim Wardle to talk about that a little bit later on. But just to note, at least acknowledge the beetle and myrtle rust, which is 1,000 kilometres away at Rowell Island. And that's obviously a worry, but we at least acknowledge that at this stage. And I'm looking forward to hearing possibly what our pathologists and entomologists think about these particular threats. I threw this one in quickly yesterday because it was really about the changing emphasis, I think, in the program. Sure, we grew out of a project around durable eucalypts, around posts and poles for the vineyard industry. But if you look where we are today, there's not only that, there are all the other products that are on the horizon for us. The LVLs, cross-laminated timber, etc. So there's a massive opportunity for expansion. The issue that we've got at the moment is we don't have a resource. All right, that's still to come. But what's interesting about that, and it's probably not a very good slide, but 2007, and I know the Cuddens who are here, and Gary Fleming was here in 2007 when I looked at the attendances, and then probably other people as well. And it was really focused around vineyard posts. There was one University of Canterbury researcher, that was Prof Walker, as I remember at the time, and a number of, obviously the, the wine industry was well represented. A number of them are not here today because it's just a little bit unfortunate. This is an important time, wine harvest at the moment, so they're not here in the numbers that we would have expected. But what we are seeing, basically, we've got, I believe, representatives from Landcorp. We've got a much more diversity, I think. Our bees, we've got people that, corporate farmers, MPI are here. So I think the landscape has changed a bit. There's much more interest. Okay, we've got 56 people here today, and I know there were a lot of people that couldn't be here for various reasons. So things are changing. We are growing, and you can see that, I think, in the interest in planting. These are thousands of plants, basically taken from a nursery survey. The numbers at this stage, I can't quite read them, but I think the important thing is the trend. There is real interest, and people are looking at an opportunity such as this, something that's a little bit different from radiata pine, and also offers potentially much higher returns, but not without risk. We've got to acknowledge that. In the future, branding's important. We want to see a fully integrated type operation, so that when you buy your certified germplasm, we can follow that, trace that all the way through to the final products. It's an aspirational goal in some ways, but the brand we've got the brand. It's there, ready and waiting. I'm getting pretty close to the end. Just wanted to sort of sum up. This was a slide taken from 2011 from Michael Henson, who's a tree breeder in Australia, and he's a very interesting sort of a guy. And we had a very successful workshop here in 2011, and his summation of a good program was this: basically that you want to focus on the client's needs as opposed to your 15 minutes of fame. That was Michael's take on it, and I think we have done that, definitely, right from the start. It's a game of numbers. Well, you're going to hear about that. This program is about testing lots and lots of genotypes, germplasm, seedlings, call it what you will. Take opportunities. I think we get a tick for that. We've taken an opportunity. Looking outside the design trials for gain, we're always looking for those trees that are something special. Think about how we're going to deploy the material at the start of any tree improvement program. Well, we've got a background in that in our business, so I think we get a tick for that, and we've made a commitment through our propagation facilities. Managing the risk. This is a tricky one. How successful are we going to be in that area? Well, time, I guess, will tell, but it's not without considerable thought going into it and research. And always have a backup plan, or be quick and clever enough to respond to failure. And I think the program is set up in such a way that we can respond. Our early selections, so we don't have to wait 8 years or more before we start seeing improvement. We've got the opportunities to take those gains much earlier on and take the risk. So I think we get a lot of ticks here from Michael's summation of what a good program is. So I'm really happy about that, and I'm hoping that today you'll also get that message from our researchers. It's a transformational opportunity. It is an opportunity, and we need to take it. And some of us are taking it, And there are always front footers, people that get out there and want to do it, and they're the guys that are going to make the mistakes, but hopefully they'll stay in the game, because growing eucalypts is not as easy in many ways as growing radiata pine. We know that. There's a lot of lessons to be learned, but fortunately we've got an outreach program. We've got a lot of expertise in the country, in the farm forestry guys, even in the corporates now. I know Sean will have learnt a few lessons over the last few years in that area at Dukin. So I think we are in a really good space. So I'm going to finish by, I just want to acknowledge two people. Many of you know Ian Nicholas, who died a couple of years ago. I mean, and he was a real supporter of this program. Scientist that spent many, many years in this whole field of special purpose species, and an ability to take research and sort of, I guess, translate it into terms that lay people and farm foresters could understand, and he's sorely missed, and his contribution has to be acknowledged. And Professor John Walker, who basically was a key driver in the early concepts of early selection and what have you, a real supporter of the program. He's retired out of it now, and he's passed on the mantle to others at the school. Many of you know him. An interesting character, a man that always continually thinks outside the square, and his contribution can't be overestimated. So I just want to acknowledge those two people and say that's my take on it. I hope you really enjoy the next day or so. We'll probably take a few questions. Don't ask me any questions, but certainly later on, at the end of each session, there's an opportunity to ask one or two questions, but we'll be summing up at the end of the day, and there's an opportunity then. So keep your questions probably to the end if you can. I'm going to ask Paul now to just step up. He just wants to say a few words, and I'll leave it at that. So enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.